My name is Joe Costanza. Some of you may know me as Bananas on Instagram. We're at my hangar with my 1941 Cub at the Flying W Airport in Medford, New Jersey.
AOPA keeps flying safe, accessible, and fun by protecting your freedom to fly. We are the most trusted one-stop resource for all things related to general aviation. Become an AOPA pilot today.
I got into flying pretty much the way most people get into flying when you're a little kid. An airplane flies overhead and you see it and you're just kind of intrigued by it. So I did what most kids did. I just took a trip to the local airport. I went there with my father and I was just walking around the ramp and a gentleman came out and introduced himself. His name was Gary. He owned Garrett Aviation, which was a flight school, but they also towed banners over the Jersey Shore in the summer. And he said, hey, if you're interested in taking flying lessons, why don't you come set up the banners in the field? For every hour you work, we'll give you a half an hour towards flight training. Did that for 2 summers. I ended up soloing around my 16th birthday, got my license there soon after, and then just pursued aviation professionally. I flight instructed for a couple years and then got hired flying a Saab 340 for a commuter airline and then an Embraer, and now I'm on the Airbus A320. I'm a captain on that. Yeah, so this is my hangar. It's something that I envisioned a really long time ago. So when I did end up getting the hangar, I think I had it decorated within 48 hours because I was kind of collecting stuff that I knew would look cool in a hangar. And my wife's family's business, they are antique art dealers. And every now and then they have old advertisements and marketing stuff. So like that gas pump there is an old toy. So I was able to pick up a lot of old antique stuff like that I felt would look good in the hangar. So this is kind of my home away from home. And it's a great spot to just come and do some hangar flying and just hang out. And the reason why I chose the Cub is because it is the complete opposite of what I thought I wanted to do growing up. I think most people, when they go through flight training, they start flying the airplanes and they want to fly, glass cockpits, they want to go faster, they want to fly a more complex airplane, and then you kind of get away from the basic stick and rudder flying, which is the epitome of what a Cub is. So for work, it's a great job, but it's a lot of button pushing, a lot of staring out the window, a lot of checklists, which are important, obviously. But the Cub is just, there's no electrical system on it, and it's just flying low and slow over the countryside. No radio, all stick and rudder. You're constantly using your left hand on the throttle, your feet for the rudder, right hand in the stick. It's constant flying, whereas the Airbus, you're more managing it. You're kind of just pushing buttons. You don't use the rudder at all. It's got auto thrust. It's got a really, really complex autopilot. So the Cub is really everything that airline flying isn't. So that's why I chose the Cub. It's a 1941 J3F. It rolled off the factory floor with a Franklin motor. And in the 50s, they put a Continental A65. It's a Dash 8. There's no starter in it. No electrical. It spent most of its life in South Carolina. And I ended up, it's a funny story how I got it. I had been looking on Barnstormers for years, just to kind of stay current with the market of Cubs. And I'd upgraded to captain, and I had a little bit more money, and I just figured I would go ahead and just get an airplane without my wife knowing. I had mentioned to her that I wanted an airplane, and she kind of laughed it off, which was jokes on her. Spent the whole day with the airplane, going over the logs, went for a flight, and then I took a selfie of it, of me in the airplane, sent it to my wife and said, hey, I bought an airplane. She thought I was kidding, but it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission, right? So I bought the airplane, it was in August, and then I had it flown up it was probably the end of August. It's kind of a throwback to the golden age of aviation. Instagram is kind of a weird, people have so many different reasons why they do social media or Instagram. But for me, it's really just about showing or promoting a side of aviation that a lot of people aren't familiar with or didn't know was possible. I think people are kind of shocked when I tell them how inexpensive it is to acquire a Cub and operate a Cub. And a lot of people assume that tail draggers are a thing of the past and you're not allowed to fly around certain airspace without ADS-B. So really, it's just putting stuff out there with the intent or the hope that somebody could just see the video and maybe it'll pique their interest and they'll click on the video maybe go on my profile and learn a little bit about that type of flying, or learn about the Cub, and hopefully it gets them to be a little bit more proactive, to stop dreaming, start doing type thing. So they see it out on social media, and then they go out and say, hey, if this guy can do it, and if he can achieve it, then I could go out and get a Cub and do the same thing. Funny story, when I first got the hanger and I started posting a little bit more consistently on Instagram, and it was just kind of funny to begin with, because initially I just had my close friends and family on Instagram, and I kind of had thrown around the idea of just posting airplane stuff, and I kind of thought people would be annoyed, or they'd be like, oh, this is enough with the airplane stuff. But I said the heck with it, and I just kept posting. And I met, somebody reached out to me by the name of Chris, and he's like, hey, I've been interested in airplanes. I live right by the Flying W. I've seen you fly over my house. Would you mind if I came by? And he rolled in with his motorcycle, and we met, and we actually became really good friends. And he bought a he's gonna be angry with me, but it's either a 1946 or 47 Luscombe 8E, which is parked right around the corner. And we'll go out flying early mornings together. We'll go on camping trips together. He is the first person that I gave a tailwheel endorsement to, so it's been pretty cool. So a typical flight for me is early morning with really, there's really never a mission, never really a goal. It's just get out early, get up, take off, and then just kind of bounce around. There's 3 grass strips here, and they're pretty quiet all throughout the day, but especially in the mornings. And I'll usually just go hop around there and just do some takeoff and landings, or I'll bring my jet boil and I'll make coffee out there in the field with my camping chair and just kind of sit there and enjoy the peace, the birds and the deer, and then I'll be able to come home like 8:30, 9 o'clock, and take the kids to school and do all that stuff. So I do most of my Cub flying early in the morning. The more I take the J3 places, like camping trips, the more I realize it is lacking in useful load. So I'd like to keep this airplane, but I would like a Super Cub eventually. My wife probably doesn't like that idea too much, but I think a Super Cub is probably in my future in the next couple of years. I'm not going to go any faster than the J3, but I can at least bring somebody and bring more than just a 110. So that's probably my future plan. I took my dad flying in the Cub, and my father hates flying. But of course, for me, he came with, and we had a good flight. And then probably just taking my kids flying is always pretty memorable. I have 4 kids, so this obviously is not the ideal airplane, but it's still a lot of fun when they hop in the front with the door open. So when I got this airplane, it was shortly before COVID, and when COVID happened, it was like peak COVID. Everything was shut down, and I said, now would be a good time to take the Cub up the Hudson River. And I did that, and it was eerie, because I remember going up to the Hudson River years ago, before 9/11 actually, and it was so busy, so many airplanes, so many helicopters, and I don't have ADS-B in this. So when I did it, I was a little concerned about the traffic, but I went really early in the morning, and I was the only person in the Hudson River. So it was eerie, but it was great to have the whole river to myself. So that was cool to do that. And I did it twice in the Cub. Now if I were to do it, I'd probably do it maybe on an early Sunday morning when there was less traffic, but that was a lot of fun to circle the statue with the door open. That was pretty cool. I think what I love about flying the most is as soon as you take off, whatever's going on in your home life, or whatever's going on in the world politically, whatever you want to call it, you're kind of not focused on any of that when you go flying. It's really just you and the airplane, and you're flying around, just looking at all the things on the ground, going to different airports, and your only focus should be your only focus, when it's really easy to just focus on flying the airplane. So no matter what's going on when you're flying in the airplane, especially the Cub, you kind of become part of it, and everything else just kind of zones out, and you kind of, I know it sounds cheesy, but you become one with the airplane. It's kind of an extension of yourself, and put on a good playlist, open the door, and really at that point, nothing else matters. It's just you and the airplane flying around, and it's pretty cool. A lot of people are like, I can't believe you wake up at 5 in the morning or 4:30 in the morning to go flying. And it's hard to put into words, and I try to do it with Instagram, right? But the beauty of taking off at sunrise with the door open in a Cub, I mean, there's very few things, if any, that compare to how awesome and therapeutic Not to sound cheesy, but it's pretty spiritual. You take off and the sun's coming up and there's like a low layer of mist and it's dead calm, nobody else is around. I mean, it's really hard to beat that. And the Cub is just the perfect airplane to do that in.